Welcome back friends and students. Today we will do a revision of chapter number 1, reproduction in organism. We will do a revision in a very fast manner. If you want to see a detailed revision, then you have to watch the previous videos which I have sent, or subscribe to the channel of Lex School of Science, and then you can do a detailed revision. But as of now, in this session we will do a revision in a very fast manner, so you have an idea that what are the important parts and what you have to focus more. So first we start with reproduction in organism. In reproduction in organism is a first topic is a lifespan. You know that every living organism, those who birth, they will ultimately get die. Okay, and that means they have a certain definite period of a lifespan in their life. After completion of a lifespan, they will die. Okay, and this lifespan vary from living organism to a living organism. Some living organism are such that who has a lifespan in days, some has in months, some has in years, some has in decades, and some has in centuries. It depends on the living organism. But remember, it does not depend on the size. Like if you see a size of a crow and parrot, almost similar in size, but crow is living for 15 years and the parrot is living for 140 years. Okay, so this is a lifespan of different. Even if you compare the size of an elephant and size of tortoise, the elephant can live for 70 years, but the tortoise can live for 100 to 150 years. Now we compare the size of elephant and tortoise, but still the lifespan gets varied. So what is the definition of a lifespan? The lifespan, that means it's a time period between birth and natural death. Okay, so it's a time period between birth and natural death of living organism. It's called as lifespan, and it is varied. The lifespan of different living organisms have been provided into an assignments and the notes. You have to focus on it. You have to remember the data which is given in the assignments and the notes. You have to remember the lifespan of different living organisms. Clear? Now, once the life is over, that living organism gets died. But you know that, suppose like a human being, it finishes its life in 65 years or 70 years. After that, still the human being remains on the earth. How it is possible? Or that living organism remains on the earth. How it is possible? And that is possible due to a process called as reproduction. Every living organism can reproduce. Reproduction is a characteristic of a living organism. So what is a reproduction? A reproduction, it is a kind of a life process in which one living organism produces another living organism which look alike or it is similar to itself. So what is a reproduction? It is a biological process in which a living organism can generate or produce a new living organism similar to itself. This is called as reproduction. And now you know the purpose of reproduction. The purpose of this reproduction is to continue the species on the earth, or it maintain the characters from generation to another generation. And so that's why the living organism reproduce. Now how many types of reproduction the living organism can do? There are two types of reproduction the living organism can do. First is called as asexual mode of reproduction, and the second one is called as sexual mode of reproduction. Okay, which are the two different types of reproduction? Asexual and sexual mode of reproduction. So now let's see a difference between asexual and sexual mode of reproduction. What is the difference between asexual and sexual mode of reproduction? So asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, there is an involvement of a single parent. Only one parent it involves into a asexual reproduction. Whereas the sexual reproduction, it involves two parents, usually of opposite sex. They are involved into a sexual reproduction. Okay, the asexual reproduction that occurs with or without formation of gametes sexual mode of reproduction that always happens with formation of gametes. Two type of gametes are produced, male gametes and female gametes. They involves in a sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, as only one parent involves, there is no fusion of gametes. No fusion of gamete in asexual mode of reproduction. So the living organism or the offspring which is produced, new offspring which is produced, that is exactly similar. Exactly similar. But here it's a fusion of two gametes. The male and female gamete fuse together. So the characteristic which is produced in new offspring, that is, it's looking to a both parents. So it's a similar looking offspring is produced. Not exact similar, but similar looking. Like for an example, we look alike our parents, but we are not exact copy of our parent, because human being, they reproduces sexually. Okay, we have characters of both parents, father and mother. Next, asexual mode of reproduction that usually happens in lower order of organisms. Okay, and the sexual mode of reproduction, it usually happens into a higher order of organism. Okay, so this is a difference between sexual and asexual mode of reproduction. Now the question comes into our mind that which is a better, whether it is an asexual mode of reproduction or sexual mode of reproduction. So the answer is the sexual mode of reproduction is a better one, because in a sexual mode of reproduction it involves the fusion of two gametes. That means that leads a possibility of generation of genetic recombinant, or a new characteristic might going to be developed. This characteristic is superior to a previous generations. Okay, and so that's why there are lots of chances of improvement in case of a sexual reproduction, or there is a lots of chances of evolution in case of sexual reproduction compared to a asexual reproduction. So that's why the sexual mode of reproduction is much better than asexual mode of reproduction. Clear? So this is the two type of reproduction, asexual and sexual mode of reproduction, and what is the difference in between them and which one is a better mode of reproduction. Now let's start with the asexual mode of reproduction first. In asexual mode of reproduction, now we know that first we will discuss the asexual reproduction in animals. Okay, so you know that asexual mode of reproduction can occur in both plants as well as animals. We will discuss one by one. First we will say the asexual reproduction in animals. The animals which reproduces asexually, it's by four ways. First is fission, second one is sporulation, third budding, fourth fragmentation. Fission means a breakdown of a cell. When the cell breaks down, obviously from one cell, how many cells are produced? Two cells are produced. Here in fission, first the nucleus divides and then cytoplasm divides. Ultimately, two cells are going to be produced. This process is called as fission. Fission can be done by lots of ways, like simple binary fission, transverse binary fission, longitudinal binary fission, and it can also be a multiple fission. In simple binary fission, the cytoplasm divides from any plane, like what happens in case of amoeba. In transverse binary fission, the cytoplasm divides on transverse. Okay, and that happens in case of paramecium and planarian. longitudinal binary fission, the cytoplasm divides longitudinally, which is observed in case of Euglena and Vorticella. And in multiple fission, that an organism which divide, that includes amoeba, paramecium and plasmodium. Clear? In multiple fission, many copies are going to be produced. But here, simple binary, transverse binary and longitudinal binary, it's a binary fission, means 2 copies are produced by one division. Okay, so that's all about the fission and their examples. Now sporulation. What is a sporulation? When the unfavorable condition is provided to a living organism, it undergoes special mode of reproduction called as sporulation, means a formation of spore occurs. Let's take example of amoeba. When unfavorable condition is provided to amoeba, the finger-like projection which is present on its surface, it gets shed off, and there is a development of 3 layers around it. These layers are called as cyst, and the process of formation of this layer is called as encystation. Okay, so that happens in the case of amoeba. Now, once the layer are formed, they becomes protected, and as they get a favorable condition, they starts to multiply. Okay, and this is called as sporulation process, which is observed in amoeba as well as it can also be observed into a plasmodium. Okay, so this is a sporulation. Next, a budding. In a budding, there is a small outgrowth of a cell is observed. A small outgrowth of a cell is called as a bud. The bud might going to be developed outside a body. If it is developed outside a body, then it is called as exogenous budding. And it may happen that the bud or the group of cell or mass that develops inside a body, what we call it as endogenous budding. The example of exogenous budding, it is observed in case of Hydrilla. And the example of endogenous budding, there are 2 examples. First is Spongilla, and the second one is Cycon. The Spongilla, it is a freshwater sponge, and the Cycon, it's a marine sponge. Here in endogenous budding, now you know that there is a formation of a bud inside a body of a living organism. Okay, the bud which is formed inside a body of living organism is called as internal bud, or it can also be called as gamete. Okay, next. Last is fragmentation. In a fragmentation, the living organism divide or fragmented into different components. Now each fragment can give a rise to a new offspring, and this is called as fragmentation. It is one kind of a regeneration, and fragmentation is observed in number of organisms, like it can observe in Hydra, it is also observed in Planaria, and it can also observe in starfish. So these are the different examples which reproduces by different way. Okay, so remember all these examples and what happens in that process. Okay. Now similarly, as the animals do a asexual reproduction by 4 ways: fission, sporulation, budding and fragmentation. Similarly, plants can also reproduces asexually. And the method adopted by a plant for asexual reproduction are the same method: fission, sporulation, budding and fragmentation. Okay. So you know the fission means a breakdown. Here the cell gets breakdown. Unicellular living organism do a reproduction like this way, what we call it as fission, and the examples are Monera, organism which falls under the Monera, algae, fungi. They reproduce by this method, what we call it as fission. Okay. Next we will see a budding. How they do by budding? Budding means there is a formation of a bud. And there are two living organisms which reproduces by formation of bud. One is an algae and the second one is fungi. Okay, so which algae? The name of algae is Dictyota and second one is Fucus. Okay, which are the examples of algae? They reproduces Dictyota and Fucus. Okay, so they reproduces by formation of adventitious branches. And the algae, that's called as protosiform, they reproduces by formation of a bud. Okay, so that is a budding in algae. Similarly, fungi. Which fungi? It reproduces by budding. It is yeast. Okay, so that's about a budding. Now the fragmentation. In a fragmentation, fragments are going to be produced. And so which living organism? Algae and fungi. Which algae? The algae which will reproduce by fragmentation are Eleutheryx, Edogonium, Spirogyra and Zygnema. And the fungi can also reproduce. Which fungi can reproduce by fragmentation method? The fungi which reproduces by fragmentation methods are Mucor, Rhizophus and Saprolagnia. They reproduces by fragmentation. Okay, so this is a fragmentation method, and the last is by formation of a spore. Similarly, like the other living organism, there are also two examples which reproduces by sporulation, by formation of spore: algae, and the second one is fungi. Which algae they form? They reproduce asexually by sporulation. The example are Eleutheryx, Edogonium and Chlamydomonas. Which fungi they reproduce asexually? In plants by sporulation method. The fungi, there are two important fungi: Penicillium and Aspergillus. In both cases, it is a sporulation method, so there is a formation of a spore. Algae and fungi, these algae and fungi, they reproduces by formation of a spore. But the algae organism, they produces the spore. The characteristic of spore is such that it is motile, means moving, and they are flagellated. These motile and flagellated spores are called as zoospore. Remember, this is important. The motile and flagellated spores, which is usually found in a algae, what they are called as zoospores. And the non-motile, non-flagellated, they are called as conidia. Okay, motile spores are found in algae, non-motile spores are found in fungi. So that's why in algae you can find a zoospore, and in fungi you can find a conidia. Okay, this spores, in algae the spores which are going to be formed, they are transported by water because they are motile, and in fungi they are transported by the air. Okay, so that's all about the asexual reproduction in plants. Okay, but these are the methods what we have seen in asexual reproduction, that is usually performed by a lower order of organism. Even some higher order of organisms like angiosperm also reproduces asexual, and the asexual mode of reproduction in them is called as vegetative propagation. What is called as vegetative propagation? So let's discuss vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation is a asexual mode of reproduction. It is not a sexual mode of reproduction, it is an asexual mode of reproduction. Means only one parent is involved in such kind of a reproduction. Here a part of a plant like root, stem, leaf or other plants, they involved in asexual reproduction, and the parts which are involved in asexual reproduction in vegetative propagation, they are called as vegetative propagules. What's called as vegetative propagules. The plants which reproduces vegetatively, they adopt either of the method, natural method and second is artificial. The natural method, in the natural method, they do a asexual reproduction or vegetative reproduction or propagations naturally with the use of their own organs. Like some use the root, some use a stem, some plants use a leaf, some use the floral bud, etc. These are the organs which are, or some use the axillary buds. Okay, so they use the different organs. You know that the organs which are involved in vegetative propagation, they are called as vegetative propagules. So which involves a root? The examples are potato, Amorphophallus, you can say the Dahlia, etc. These are the plants which reproduces vegetatively with the help of root. Some plant uses stem. Like for an example, in the case of ginger, turmeric, okay, you can say onion, they use the stem. Some use a leaf. Like in case of Bryophyllum, this plant use a presence of bud which is present in margin of leaf to reproduce vegetatively. The floral bud, like for an example, agave and oxalis. This plant utilizes the floral bud to reproduce vegetatively, and the axillary bud, the example is Dioscorea. Okay, so this is called as vegetative propagations, okay, which do naturally. Now in certain plants the vegetative propagation occurs naturally, but they do a modification of their organs for vegetative propagations. Like in many cases the stem gets modified for a purpose of vegetative propagations. So which are the examples in which stem gets modified? That's called as runners, it is offset. This is the modification of stem for vegetative propagation. Stolons, suckers. Like runners is observed in grass, lawn grass. Offset is observed in pistia. Stolon is observed in Nephrolepis. And suckers it's observed in mint. They are made for vegetative propagation. So that's all about the natural method of vegetative propagation. Now the artificial method of vegetative propagation. In the artificial method of vegetative propagation, there are three methods. They are the man-made: cutting, layering, and grafting. In cutting, a cut part of a stem that is going to be utilized for asexual mode of reproduction. A cut part of a root can be utilized or cut part of a stem can be utilized. Like for an example, it is observed in case of lemon, tamarind, or you can say rose, cotton, chrysanthemum. There are many plants which reproduces by cutting method. Okay. Here cut part is going to be used. Next is layering. What we have to do in layering? In a layering, a branch of a plant that we have to bend in such a manner that the middle of that branch goes inside the soil and the tip of plant that remains outside. So the middle portion which remains inside the soil, from that the adventitious root develops and then the aerial part grows. Once the new plant is formed, it can be detached from the parent plant. This is called as layering. What we do in case of a rose, lemon, or you can say hibiscus, jasmine. These are the few examples in which vegetative propagation can be done by layering or artificially. Next is grafting. This grafting is an artificial method of vegetative propagation. Where it is useful in the cases where there is a weak root system of a plant, or there is a difficulty for a plant to establish or make a contact with the soil. In that circumstances, the grafting is used. In that, suppose these are the two plants, plant number A and plant number B. Okay. Now this B plant is grafted on A plant. Okay. The plant which is selected as a stock should be such as that it has a very good contact with the soil. This is called as stock, and this is called as scion. The plant which is going to be selected, that is called as a stock, that has a very good strength for rooting, and the scion that should be selected in such a way that that portion is, or you require the characteristic of it. Or you can say that the part which is going to be grafted, on stock, is called as scion. Okay. So this is responsible for maintaining the support, and the scion is responsible for giving the characteristic to a plant. Okay. So this is stock and scion which is utilized in a grafting, and many fruits can be produced by this way, like apple, grapes, mango, citrus fruit. Okay. I will give you a very good example of a grafting. You know the lemon. The size of lemon is like a small ball. Okay, it is a kind of a citrus fruit. And you also know the orange. It is of somewhat bigger size comparable to a lemon. Now where we are using the lemon is known for its juice, because that juice contains the citric acid. It contains the vitamin C. So what is our concern? The lemon should have more and more vitamin C and the juice which is present in it. So anyhow we have to increase the size of lemon. So what we have done? We have taken a stalk and scion. We have fused together. We have fused together a plant of a lemon and the orange together by grafting method. And so what there? We have bigger size of a lemon which have more juice and vitamin C. You might see this kind of a lemon in the market, what in Gujarati commonly call it as gadda lemon. Okay, so that is available, that is produced by a grafting method. Okay, so what are the purpose of this vegetative propagation? Why we do an artificial method? As you know that here we can get a desired characteristic, like with the help of combining or grafting lemon on an orange, we are able to get a more size of a lemon. Okay, or different variety of lemon is going to be produced. So when we want to get a desired characteristic, at that time the vegetative propagation is useful. Apart from that, it is a vegetative propagation, a kind of asexual reproduction, only one parent is involved. So that's why here the characteristics are maintained from generation to generation, because exact copies are produced. Like you have very good variety of a mango with you, and you want to preserve these characters from generation to generation, you should not have to go for sexual reproduction, because in sexual reproduction characteristic gets mixed. Characteristic of both parents gets mixed. Okay. But in asexual reproduction, exactly similar looking copies are going to be produced. So there is no chances of mixing of character. That means if you have very good variety of mango, then only very good variety of mango is produced by it. So at that time, when you want to preserve characters over a long period of time, the method which is going to be adopted is a vegetative propagation. That is the importance of vegetative propagation. So today we have discussed lifespan, reproduction and asexual mode of reproduction, and the difference between the sexual and asexual mode of reproduction. Tomorrow we will discuss, or in the next session, we will discuss the sexual mode of reproduction. Okay? Till then, keep revising this, learn it, try to remember and like this channel. Thank you for watching.